The one thing we do know about her is she had more than one child. Well, that's good. So we know there was an ape. It was born in Africa 6 million years ago, and we know it had more than one child. Every human is descended from one of those children. Now, if you say Adam and Eve were the first two people and all humans descend from them, everyone will laugh and say, how dumb, how foolish, that is a fairy tale, that's insane. But this story says once upon a time there was an ape who was born in Africa. And one thing we know for certain, she had more than one child, and every human descended from one of those children, and every chimpanzee descended from another one of her children. Now, that may be maybe not the most scientific explanation in the world, but it brings up the basic mindset. I just want you to hear, when you state it that way, that's not as sophisticated, and that's not as, well, you don't have to be embarrassed for believing that. Now, you don't feel like you have to be embarrassed because academia and the world accepts that as being a fact. If you go with the Adam and Eve theory, you're mocked as being foolish. Can't both sides just admit when it comes to how we all got here, we're still left with a lot of questions, and we have to acknowledge that both of them sometimes, when you really take a step back and look at the big picture, and not just, you can use all kinds of scientific terms and use all kinds of language, but when you get down to it, both positions have its problems. One says, in the beginning, God, he created the heavens and the earth. The other one says, in the beginning was matter, and it blew up, and we're here. One says, in the beginning, God created man, Adam and Eve. He created humans in his image. The other one says, well, 6 million years ago, there was an ape born in Africa. We don't know a lot, but we know she had more than one child. And we know that every human is descended from one of those children, and every chimpanzee is descended from another one. And that doesn't sound to me any more sophisticated. But this is what I thought. This was published in 2017. Right? Now sometimes we get frustrated that Christians are constantly disagree with everything and they're constantly fighting. That's how that book presented it. We can trace our origins back to Africa, back to an ape that was born 6 million years ago. We don't know a lot about her, but she had more than one child. One of those children, that's where we all come from. And the other child, that's where all the chimpanzees come from. All right. The end. All right. And we all lived happily ever after. Okay. That's that story. However, if you do a little search, I'm going to bring this up. I got it right here. This comes to us from a newspaper article. Sarah Knapton is the science editor for the telegraph.co.uk. Here is the headline. Europe was the birthplace of mankind, not Africa, scientists find. Now, wait a minute. This book, which is very pro-evolution, because this book is really dealing about trying to figure out where we came from, and it's still using a lot of science in it, a lot of evolutionary concepts. They go with the idea that 6 million years ago, we can trace our origins back to Africa. You do a little research, and you're like, wait a minute, Europe was the birthplace of mankind, not Africa, scientists find. So the history of human, and now I'm going to read this story. Europe was the birthplace of mankind, not Africa, scientists find. Let me read to you the story. The history of human evolution has been rewritten after scientists discovered that Europe was the birthplace of mankind, not Africa. Currently, most experts believe that our human lineage split from apes around 7 million years ago in Central Africa. Now remember, the book said 6 million. This says 7 million. But I mean, what's a million, right? I mean, hey, but you don't have to be exact, right? You don't have to be, you can be off a million. There can be wide range. But hey, you're the smart ones, and anyone who diverged from this, you're fools and you're dumb and you're uneducated. But again, and you can do this. You can just search all kinds of scientific literature. Because sometimes you feel like, well, Christians can't agree on anything. this is true of so many areas of study where there's just massive disagreements. All right, but okay, currently this is what they say. Remember, that book was published in October of 2017, so I don't know when it was written, but obviously prior to that. But they say currently most experts believe that our human lineage split from apes around 7 million years ago in Central Africa. All right, and it remained for the next 5 million years before venturing further afield. But two fossils of an ape-like creature which had human-like teeth have been found in Bulgaria and Greece, dating to 7.2 million years ago. The discovery of the creature by scientists proves our ancestors were already starting to evolve in Europe 200,000 years before the earliest African, theory. An international team of researchers say the findings entirely change the beginning of human history and place the common ancestors of both chimpanzees and humans, the so-called missing link, in the Mediterranean region. At that time, climate change had turned Eastern Europe into an open savanna, which forced apes to find new food sources, sparking a shift towards, a lot of other developments. I'm not going to go into all of them, all right? The study changes the ideas related to the knowledge about the time and the place of the first steps of humankind. All right, so there you have it, and you can, I've got the whole article here, and they've got drawings, and they've got the tooth. They got the tooth. And I guess they found a tooth. I guess that's, I guess there you go. And you rewrite entire evolutionary history based off that. I'm going to set the iPad back on its holder. All right. So why did I want to talk about that? I want to talk about it from this perspective. When I read the book, this is what hit me. Sometimes when I hear atheists talk and they mock Christians as being so dumb, and if you ever see Answers in Genesis, if they post anything, say on Twitter or on social media, you'll see all the people swoop in and attack them as being uneducated and being dumb and being foolish. And they mock it, and they mock, and they mock, and they mock, and they mock. And sometimes it's irritating because sometimes the people mocking, say, Answers in Genesis, you'll go and look at the author, and it'll be the author has a PhD from, a major university, and you want to say to the people mocking it, in social media, like, where did you get your degree in science? I mean, here's here's a PhD or, whatever advanced degree in science from a reputable university, a university that you would say is obviously not a Christian university in any way, shape, or form, not a Bible college, but that's okay. That they're still dumb because they don't hold to the dogma of evolution. All I want to say is this. When you take a step back and you go, wait, once upon a time, 6 million years ago, in Africa, this monkey was born. And we know it had more than one child. Now, one of those children, that's where we all come from. The other child is where all the chimpanzees come from. Okay, all right, good. Wait, time out. We're going to do this again. 7.2 million years ago, not in Africa, somewhere in Europe, Mediterranean area, Greece, somewhere over there, maybe 200,000 years before, now they say 200,000 years before. Well, you're over a million. If one says 6 million, the other one says 7 million, some say 7.2 million. I mean, you're, 200,000 years, a million years, what we think. But hey, that's dogma. It's not a theory, it's a fact. And if you deny that, you're a fool. And I just think sometimes Christians should take some comfort that yes, there are things in the Bible that doesn't make sense. There are philosophical problems with a lot of issues in Christianity. There are things in the Bible that can make you feel foolish. I completely acknowledge that. There's things in the Bible that appear to be foolish, and we have to acknowledge, we don't have to pretend that it's not, it is. But when you step back and go, wait a minute, how did we get here? Let me get this. So in the beginning was no one, okay? So matter that's not living blows up, and ultimately that leads to life. So life came from non-living material, right? Okay, so, and if all that really exists is material, so then things like love, what is love? Is love just simply chemical reactions in the brain, and it's really nothing more than that? There's nothing transcendent to it. There's nothing to it. Where does morality come from? They have just as many philosophical problems if they're really willing to admit it. Here's the thing. Believers of both sides, materialism or theism, they are many times unwilling to acknowledge weaknesses in their own position. Right? This is true of Christians as well. They're unwilling to acknowledge the difficulty. And what they tend to do is just point at the other side and go, look how dumb that is. Look at how foolish that is. Look at how dumb that is. We're trying as human beings to capture why we exist. What's our purpose? Now, I believe Christianity offers some great answers to certain questions. Where did I come from? I came from a supreme being who created me. Therefore, purpose has to be found outside of myself into something transcendent, something that goes beyond me, that gives purpose, that gives meaning, that gives reason. Okay, I think that's better than materialism, which I would have no transcendent purpose. My purpose would just be to eat, drink, for tomorrow I die, right? Be good to people. Why be good to people, right? Wouldn't it be survival of the fittest? Take what I can get. I mean, who knows? I mean, so origins makes more sense. Things like love, the existence of love, the existence of the constant longing in humankind to find meaning, to try to find purpose. Why are we so consumed with meaning and purpose? Why are we so consumed with answering these deep philosophical questions if all we are the products of an ape born somewhere between 6 and 7 million years ago, somewhere in Africa or Europe? You know, we're basically just, very smart apes. I mean, that brings lots of problems. And then not only that, morality. Where does morality derive from? If I hold to a materialistic view, morality comes from people. Well, if it comes from people, you have a couple of options in how to answer the moral question. The minority determines morality. So the small group can determine morality for everyone else. Well, that doesn't work because you've got some very bizarre small groups that believe lots of crazy things. The KKK, we could go, MANBLA, the Man Boy Love Association. We have, pedophiles. You have a small groups of minorities that everybody's saying, no, we don't want the minorities to determine morality. That would be wrong. So then the majority determines morality. No, we don't want the majority to determine morality because there was a time the majority wanted to take away rights from people who were not white. And they wanted to enslave human beings. Okay, well, we don't want the majority to determine. So if it's not the majority, and if it's not the minority, where does morality derive from? I believe Christianity offers a transcendent morality. I like that idea a little bit. I think Christianity offers a reason for all the evil in the world, for all the sin in the world. Now, it's still not completely satisfying, but I understand that human beings are depraved sinners, and therefore they commit sinful acts. That makes sense. That explains why you just can't say, hey, people, be good, and they'll be good, even though in many cases it would be better for the furtherance of the human species, for the human race. It would be better, logical, if the human race worked together. We could end things like poverty and famine and disease. But instead of working together, we fight and we bicker and we have war, and people steal and people kill. And no matter how many programs you pass, no matter what you do, evil continues to exist. Why does it exist? It exists because we are sinners. That makes more sense. Now, there's still philosophical problems with the Christian perspective because, well, why did God create a world knowing it was going to exist and do everything in a sense to lead it to that existence? All I'm trying to say is when I read this novel and they put it that way, I had to take a step back and go, you know what? Sometimes I feel foolish being a Christian around certain people. But their position, when you really break it down to its very lowest common denominator, it's pretty silly too. Okay, it may not have a talking snake. I give you that. You may not have a boat, an ark, where saves everything by all the, the two of all the animals